Mike Dooley.
Leon, how are you? Unhappy, happy. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm very well. Thank you so much for literally, I had no idea who it was going to be, right? I mean, the whole point of this podcast is really to connect with people without any preconditions, without Googling each other. I mean, look, me and you know each other, right? But it's just like having a human connection, a human discussion.
Yeah, it's nothing better than reality interviews, reality TV. I mean, raw and in the moment, like it really ought to be, without the scripts, without the agenda.
Absolutely.
I love it. I'm honored.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to know, how did Mike Dooley become Mike Dooley?
Oh my gosh. Trial and error, probably more error, and still a learning process. But as far as, I guess, where I am in my life now, if I was to name one thing that probably had the most to do with me becoming a writer and a speaker and, a thinker on the nature of reality, it would be, I've always, Leon, since I was like under 10, like wondering like who and how and what. In the beginning, raised a Catholic. I can't say that I am one today, but it's born of good intentions, and it's the eternal pursuit of answers. I would ask the priests and the nuns, why does God send somebody to hell, and couldn't God forgive them or see through the mistakes they made? When I was preteen, I was asking my mother, time has got to be an illusion, because a human life of 100 years on a timeline that goes to infinity is so unimportant. But we know our lives are important. It's just time can't be what we think it is. And God can't not be part of all things. There can't be like, there's God over there, or call it divine intelligence, because I'm not speaking of a religious God. There can't be God and then, humanity or the physical universe. It's like, what would it, where would we have come from? God doesn't have a shed out in the backyard to make stuff from. We all have to be of that stuff. So just my little wandering mind would want to know, who are we? How did we get here? Mom didn't have the answers. Priests, nuns didn't have the answers. And I started deducing my own, God has to be in everything, that time has to be an illusion, which didn't give me traction at that stage, but it set the course for me to continue asking questions and to feel them out on my own, that there can't be a devil or a hell, because everyone's doing their best, and any God, if there is one sitting in judgment, would be big enough to accept responsibility for his own creation, and to perhaps, given that he has eternity, be able to, fix the broken human. You got forever and ever. Can't you redeem them instead of, scalding them in hell forever? So I would draw these conclusions. They gave me some peace. They were totally weird and helter-skelter, like unpredictable. But then in my late teenage years, I came across some books, the Seth material, a channeled material dictated by the late Jane Roberts. I said, Mom, you lost it. You're off your rocker. She said, read what Seth has to say about reality. Don't judge the source. And my gosh, Seth confirmed my own little piddly conclusions, and then added a mountain's worth more that I couldn't have dreamed of on my own, that thought is the building block of all physical matter, that we're here as eternal beings by choice, that we are of God, by God, pure God, that it's all about the adventure, to fall in love and to be loved, that it's beauty and health and healing everywhere except for the confusion we create that appears as evil. And because I was, well into living my, teenage life, playing tennis, competitive sports, getting good grades, dreaming of having an awesome life, there was a place for this knowledge. It wasn't just esoteric. It was like, this is how to have an amazing life. You figure out these big questions and you learn that God's not here to test you, judge you, and sentence you. You know, you get lit up. You're pushed on to greatness every day. Your thoughts become things. All things are possible. No wonder there's a power to positive thinking, because thoughts become the things and events of our lives. So from that point forward, with my biggest questions answered, certainly not all my questions, it was about living a really amazing life. And I got a job with Price Waterhouse, became a certified chartered accountant, became an entrepreneur in my late 20s. I still am that same entrepreneur with Tut.com, Tut Enterprises, Inc. It's been an amazing run financially, creatively, emotionally, romantically. Fatherhood is involved. It's like my wildest dreams came to pass, and that's what it's all about. That's how I got here, Leon. You know, asking questions, coming up with the answer is our highest responsibility. The answer is always objective and absolute. I totally don't believe that, you know, I don't like the idea everyone has their own truth, which sounds nice on the surface, but there goes your power. You know, if anything wacky could happen to anybody, because everybody gets their own truth, everybody is entitled to their own path to truth, and all paths to truth ought to be honored. But no path changes truth. We're of God, by God, pure God. We're eternal beings. We're here by choice. Dreams come true. Thoughts become things. Those are immovable pillars of reality. They are the feast that we can count on to hang our hat on, so that elephants don't turn into trees, turn into monkeys, turn into dollar bills, turn into tornadoes. It's like, no, that's not possible. There's not different truths. There are very few pillars, and from which we have a stage to live our lives.
Wow. What what question should someone ask themselves in order to get closer to their truth, to the truth, to God, to the magic of living a beautiful life? What kind of questions should one ask themselves?
Wow, I love that. There's two avenues to go down to make it relevant, and so that you give a damn, so that you care. Because if you don't care, if it's just esoteric, what could possibly be the meaning of life? That doesn't excite anybody. But what do you hunger for? What do you want with your heart and soul? I mean, whether it's love or money or fulfillment or to be heard, all of those are worthy end results. We're all entitled to those things. Those are our birthrights. What do you want, and what can you do about it? And as soon as you hit a roadblock, as soon as you stub your toes, as soon as somebody says no or you get smacked down, ask, you know, how else can I approach this? What else can I do? What am I not seeing? And then by being driven by a passion and by not accepting no for an answer, you will be pushed to your limits in discovering your power, which will lead you ultimately to the realization that you are supernatural. The other pathway is what's hurting you. What's scaring you? What do you worry about? And is that reasonable? You know, you are this magnificent being, worthy of your days. Surely anything that you might want to do in those days is you're deserving of. I mean, if you can be here, which is more than we could ever accomplish with the most magnificent life, no matter what anybody watching right now might ever accomplish, it won't compare to the fact that they're here. You know, make $1 million, whatever, get married, have a family, write a bestseller. That doesn't compare to you've got life. And so when you start realizing that and something hurts you or disturbs you, and there's disturbing, ugly stuff out there, but let those be kind of a pathway to a line of questions where you could perhaps find clarity, ultimately peace, and traction enough to maybe not bulldoze through it, but go around it. So either be led by your passions, rationalize that they're reasonable, understand that you deserve them, take action, be present, notice what other people have done to get there, and then you might model some of what you do after them, and or notice what keeps you up in fear at night. Everybody's got something they're scared of. I'm scared of stuff. Notice what is taking your attention away from the beauty that's everywhere, and go there. Like, is this reasonable? Is that right? Is this the way it should be in the kingdom of God? Not a religious God, but in the presence of divine mind. Should there be this boogeyman? Should there be this sense of inadequacy? Step up, go within. What aren't you seeing about yourself and your own wondrous being that's plainly there? And thereby incrementally, bit by bit, gain some more confidence, gain more clarity, have more traction, let time run its course. The pendulum's got to swing. You're not going to banish fear overnight, but you can manage it, and you're good to go. I think that's how we get close to truth, following our heart and addressing those things that scare us and that make us uncomfortable.
Do you know, it's interesting. As you know, I've done a lot of traveling. I've experienced a lot on the outside and on the inside, right? And when I'm, let's say, in India, by the Ganges, I feel connected to the divine. But when I find myself back at home, I find myself opening my emails, I find myself dealing with daily life. That feeling of connection that I had when I was in the Ganges has been destroyed. Destroyed in the sense of I'm not connected to it anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I think many people listening to this can have that kind of same sense where if they're under the Bodhi tree, everything is beautiful. But the moment they're not under the Bodhi tree, it all falls apart. How do we stay with the feeling under the Bodhi tree when we're back at home, when we're no longer under the Bodhi tree?
Wow. These are the kind of questions that bring you closer to God. So well done. Two things. One, the short-term fix is go back to India. I mean, let there be that wanderlust that's always alive and always being exercised. Nobody should come back and say, well, it's just as spiritual here, so I should be able to find it in my own backyard. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty tall order. And yes, it's true. But, life is so beautiful and people are so awesome. It's like, do all you can, and I do this myself, to be on as many adventures as manageable. One a year, one every 2 years, 4 a year, whatever works with your schedule. Some years you can travel a lot more than last year. And give yourself these things. Too often I would want to be more austere and be like, you don't need that. And you don't need the money, and you don't need to buy that new shirt. You don't need to buy this house or that trip or fly first class. It's like, I want to. Well, do it. You should be doing it until you don't want to, in balance with all other things. Don't be a denier based on philosophical, idealistic principles that it's not necessary and anybody could be happy with no matter what the lack is in their life. So I think we really, one of the secrets to living the life of your dreams, I once wrote, is to begin now, today, start living your dreams to any little degree that you can. The second answer is to ultimately realize, which is, I think what I'm dancing around and what you alluded to, is that, the Bodhi tree is a movable feast. In spite of what I just said, it does exist around every corner in our lives. And that doesn't mean, be a hermit at home or in your backyard and damn it, learn to be happy. But, as instead of only adventuring or mostly adventuring, internationally into really exotic cultures, we can adventure locally. When coronavirus is gone, we can adventure to the beach or to the park or to a gathering with friends or at a movie theater or at a late night party and really God is absolutely everywhere. The beauty is absolutely everywhere. The sublime is absolutely everywhere. And I think ultimately, as we both sense, we can find that anywhere at any time. But until we get there, enjoy the travel and the periodic adventures, and always be working that muscle to find the Bodhi tree no matter where you are, whether it's people watching at the mall or anywhere else. I mean, it is just as magical there. Easier to see when you give yourself the spice of diversity in life, and you live as well-rounded and adventurously as you reasonably can.
You know what? I've known you for a while, and you always seem to be bubbly, happy, full of life, on a path. And I sometimes think to myself, surely there are moments where you're not that, right? Because you're human like everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that I don't have those moments all the time. Most of my moments, if I'm to be honest, are not these peak experiences, are not these moments where everything's happy and hunky-dory. They are when I'm struggling. And I would imagine that there are people listening to this that can relate to that, right? Relate to that struggle. How, first of all, are you always happy? And secondly, assuming you're not, but maybe you are, right? How do you deal with the bumps in the road? How do you deal with life, right? Because life sometimes slaps you in the face. Yeah. And whenever I've met the holy ones, whether it be in India, whether it be in Peru, they do have this sense of peace, right? And it just seems to flow through them. Whereas for me and for others, the peace doesn't necessarily flow through us. It's the opposite. So there are multiple questions in there, but.
Yeah, I totally get it. And, I still have, of course, I think it is quite attainable to be at a place of this serene surrender and peace that you've experienced in other people. I think that is a viable dream. I still have my lions and tigers and bears. I feel anxious sometimes. I feel, in a hurry, like I can't get enough done in a day sometimes. I don't really have bad days anymore. I don't really get into a funk anymore. But it's taken, I just turned 60. It's taken all of these years to get to that place. I can remember 20 years ago when I was kind of reinventing myself, I was in and out of that place kind of a lot. And I wondered, does this ever end? And what I would say to anybody is that the longer you're on the path, the easier it does get, and the more fun it does get, and the fewer bad days one has. And I've said this several times in the last few years, but there'll be the odd day, and they're like almost spaced by years now, where I'm just like in this really kind of yucky, gross, uninspired feeling. And I don't really know it. I'm just in it. And then I have perspective and context that I'm just like, wow, man, I haven't felt like this in I can't even remember when I felt like this. And it's like, oh man, this is like the bad moods I used to be in fairly frequently. And it's like, holy crap, it's been a year and a half, 2 years. I can't even count when it was the last time I would feel like that. And astonishingly now, and I think we acquired tools over the years or perhaps decades where I'm I actually will notice, within the day or by the next day that the feeling is completely gone. I will see more clearly what it was that was maybe kind of taking the wind out of my sails. I'll put it in context. I won't be doing it through gross effort, like heavy lifting. It'll just be like, oh God, that was really an interesting experience. And by no means am I perfect. By no means have I found all the answers, but it's a matter of kind of, one of the questions you asked, like, what do you do to kind of roll through those things or deal with them? Back in the day, my brother and I, who is also a writer, speaker, he used to say, when all else fails, and life really whacks you upside the head, read Seth. Now, Seth, I mentioned, was dictated by the late Jane Roberts, this very profound, non-agenda kind of world views. Basically, it's truth. As I shared already, I view that there is a truth to all things. It is absolute and immovable. There are very few truths, we're all one. It's all good. There's only love. There's only God. God is love. Thoughts become things. That's about it. But when you immerse into kind of deep truth, or someone sharing it, or a website, or a DVD that kind of dances in and out of these presumptions, it is the most refreshing thing. And you find you have a sense of getting your power back. And you have a sense like, oh, yeah, I'm not vulnerable. And okay, I've got to let the pendulum swing. I'm working really hard. Things haven't given. There's been a disappointment. Don't interpret circumstances nor judge your journey by what's just happened. Circumstances are circumstances. And sometimes what looks like the end of the world to the physical senses is actually the biggest leg up you've ever received in your life. But in the moment, you can't see that. So don't judge that. And these are the kind of tools, or the kind of outlook or perspective that I'm kind of immediately confronted with these days, without looking for Seth, or without turning to a favorite of ours, Autobiography of a Yogi, or without, going elsewhere, but within. It's just like, is this reasonable? To be so wound up? Is this reasonable to be worried to the point of losing sleep? Is this reasonable to be arguing with somebody in your head? What are you afraid of, Mike? What are you afraid of? And I might do some journaling, or I might write stuff out. Those kind of things happen more than like a really bad day. But like all of a sudden, I'm just derailed, obsessively worried about somebody's behavior, whatever, a client, a partner, a publisher, although I have not my publisher, but, other people. And then, I'll just kind of go within and think about it. Like, how does that stack up to the truth, that you're an eternal being, that you can change that which you don't like, that you're not vulnerable. And it gets easier. It's like, it just gets a lot easier. So you never stop learning, but you get to a point where it doesn't just totally set you back and blow your mind and break your heart. You're just like, oh, that was kind of freaky, and I didn't see that coming. But, I got a lot more going on in my life. I don't have to worry about that one thing. The pendulum will swing. I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to be okay. And that's how you roll with it. You manage it. You manage it.
So I've got to wait till 60 before I become calm.
No, you don't have. That's how long I had to wait. Not you. You're on the fast track.
Oh my God. So, you know a little bit about me. You know that I've spent the past 2 decades trying to kind of fix myself. I mean, not that I was broken, but, just to kind of find the path, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what you say, I understand because I've read books, because I've, traveled. So it kind of settles deeply inside me and I get it, right? However, there are many people out there that have never been to a therapist, right? Or have never picked up a self-help book, or have never truly kind of looked at themselves, but they are deeply suffering. They are in deep pain, much of it unconscious, some of it conscious, whether they're picking up drinks, whether they're taking drugs, whatever they're doing to hide their pain, right? How do you speak to that person's heart so that they understand what you're saying the same way that I do, because I've spent 2 decades looking at myself?
That's one of the most heartbreaking questions I get, often from mothers who are just devastated by the gulf between them and their children. Maybe their children are into drugs, or they're incarcerated, or they're just making terrible choices. The hardest part of the answer is that, we're all here to learn. Nobody came here to be perfect. And we're learning these things foremost of life's beauty and our power. But in the journey, we get sidetracked into whether it's, bad behavior, psychedelics, making bad choices, and it hurts and we trip and we fall. But what better way to learn of our folly or our misunderstandings than to trip and fall? So it's like tough love. You've got to allow them to come around in their own way. Yet at the same time, there's no question that one's love for anybody else that they care about will be received by that person, and does stand a huge chance of making a difference, though not at the speed or to the degree that the one doing the loving would choose. So it's just, love them, allow them to be them, allow them to make their mistakes, catch them when they fall to the degree you can, but you're not always going to be there. And then remember this, it's all being played out in the heart of God. Nobody really gets lost. Nobody ever becomes less for the decisions they make in time and space. This is our playground. This is our workshop. This is not reality as we think it is reality, which is not to diminish from the importance of a lifetime. It is everything while you're here, but there's so much more. And perhaps the reason you or I or the loved one who's concerned about the one that's fallen is in a place of compassion and empathy and understanding, with a little bit of traction to be able to navigate our own hills and valleys, is because we were allowed in some forgotten time, maybe in another past lifetime, to slip and fall and learn our lessons for ourselves that never could have been learned if somebody was, wrapping us up in bubble wrap and not letting us make our own choices. So as hard as it is to let somebody learn from their mistakes, it's always got to be part of the equation. And again, it's all unfolding in the heart of God. This is a world of hocus pocus, illusions, holographic. There's a greater love. We're all going to be rehabilitated. We're all going to get to that winner's circle. We're all going to have a great laugh around the celestial campfire. And we're going to be like, I got a great idea. I got a best idea in the world, Leon. Let's go back. Let's go back to time and space. Let's be best friends. I'll be your mom. You be the kid. You be my dad. I'll be the sister. Let's go back and we'll support each other. And we're going to remember that we're divine beings of light. And we're going to share really good books. And we're going to watch really good DVDs. And we're going to do it together, arm in arm. Oh, baby. This is the nature of the game. This is the reality. And while it's so heartbreaking in the middle of it to feel like something's lost or someone's lost, not to diminish from their pain, but it's all it's all inside of God, and it's going to be okay. Just love them through it, love them near, love them from afar, however they can handle it. And that's all you can do. And don't let that be your only focus in life, as much as your beloved might be worthy of it. Life is still more, and life is still beautiful.
As you know, I'm working on a documentary about God, and it's interesting. You graciously are part of it. Actually, I'm in the process of watching your interviews. So it's kind of interesting to me that I had no idea it was going to be you on this podcast, as you know, because that's the way that we're doing the podcasts. And B, of all the things that we could talk about, we're talking about God, right? And I'm currently editing the documentary about God. And I find it interesting. You made it clear, you said God, but not the religious God, right? The divine. If I were to tell you, I would say to you, Mike, I need you to prove to me that God exists. You have 1 minute. What would you do? Because the reason why I'm asking you that question is because clearly you're a man of passion, right? Clearly you're a man that kind of comes from the heart and feels everything vibrantly. But there are people out there that don't. Yeah. So how can you prove to me that God exists?
I don't try to look at life or my work as I need to get everybody, save everybody, teach everybody. They're all going to get there anyway. But if I had 1 minute, I would just try to rationalize and reason, like just look into the mirror. Look at the globe. Look at the 100 million species. Did you know that there are 10 sextillion stars? 10 sextillion stars, not to mention planets. The number of planets is so mind-numbing that it just can't be random. And it can't be that consciousness sprung from space dust. That's a non-starter. It's impossible. It's never happened in a laboratory. It's never going to happen. Rocks don't create consciousness. Consciousness, on the other hand, create rocks and stones and matter and illusions. And when you look at the harmony and the symbiotic relationships of not only 7.5 billion co-creators on planet Earth, but all of the other species. Now, the humans are creating a lot of harm, but it's still not too late. We're the species that's kind of out of whack, but we're waking up to our responsibilities and we're seeing that. So that demonstrates our power in the whole mixture as well. I would say it's just too beautiful, too perfect, too magnificent, too spellbinding to be an accident, or to have been the produce of space dust that collided. Just illogical. And if you're not there, I love you anyway. It's okay. We're brothers and sisters.
I like it. When was the moment? I know you talked about it earlier, but the specific moment when you had, let's call it a spiritual awakening, when you got in touch with whatever it is that is out there, when you woke up to there being more than just making money, than, all the materialistic human side of things. When was that moment? I had a moment, but when was your moment?
I kind of feel like, and this is something I've learned and witnessed and experienced and have read other people speak of. It's like that moment is our true state, and everything about our life is kind of against that moment. So in a way, that moment was always there, yet I was in total denial until I started slowly piecing together answers to some of the bigger questions truly as a boy. And so I really don't have that sexy story of when all of a sudden, I realized I was not being judged. It was this kind of peeling away the layers of false identity and bogus beliefs that, that we're here to be tested, judged, and sentenced, or that life is a random chance accident, and slowly giving myself permission to recognize that everything must be God, divine intelligence, with a purpose, with meaning, showered in love. So your story is probably much sexier, and I think I know which one yours is. But mine was finally realizing all along that it was here, and that we've all been faking it and denying the truth from as long as we've been walking.
I often tell people that we have to go out in search of the last human beings And what I mean by that is that so many of us are kind of stuck in our iPhone. We're stuck in the news. We're stuck in the land of the Kardashians, right? And only when you become unstuck from that world do you reconnect with your birthright, which is your humanity. And that's basically what you just said, that you were always connected to whatever it is we're connected to, but you had no idea that you were connected. And when you finally had that moment, or I finally had that moment, or others had that moment, it is simply an awakening to your humanity.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I love those chosen words because it reveals the divinity within humanity. It's not like humanity as is typically understood, pure mortal, from dust back to dust. It's like there's something far more magnificent happening at the same time. And we share that. We're all the eyes and the ears of God, seeing reality from a perspective that no one else could possibly have. No one will ever see all that Leon sees, and no one will ever feel all that Leon feels. That's why God wanted to be you. And the same can be said for every single one of us. It's like this unbelievable view of what God has created through all of our eyes, ears, and hearts that could not otherwise be replicated. And now that we're here, it's about just marvel, just bask, just love it all. That's the meaning of life.
That's beautiful and profound. And it goes back to, you've clearly had experiences where you're connected. I've had experiences where I'm connected. Many of the listeners will have had experiences when they're connected. To me, one of the most painful things is to be connected and then lose that connection. Because you know what it means, how it feels to be connected.
Yeah.
And when you lose that feeling, that presence, it is so painful. And it's sometimes I think to myself, I'm not saying this as a statement of fact. I'm saying sometimes in my crazy thinking, I think to myself, well, maybe it would have been better not to have ever been connected.
Oh,
because I would never have had to know that I wasn't at that space, you know? And I say it's like the space between connection to the divine and total disconnection is where the pain really lies.
Yeah. I have this theory and this view, and I get what you're saying. And that's a heartbreaking perspective. But really and truly, if we could see far enough back with the greatest perspective and the truest context, we would realize that there's this kind of spiral that actually there's no going back. The more enlightened you are, the closer you are to truth. There are times when you feel a setback, and there are times when the connection feels lost. But from far enough back, it was just kind of a waxing and a waning. And there's this perpetual, ascension, if you will, which if you can't see it, you feel like, I've lost so much. So many people will say to me, it was easier to manifest when I was a kid and dumb. Now I try so hard and nothing works anymore. It's like, no, you were blissfully ignorant back then, and it was time to take your game to a higher level. And so now you've got to take this other awareness with you and be mindful of it instead of doing it accidentally. And that's calling you to be your very best. Anybody could kind of ignorantly manifest good stuff from time to time, but to do it intentionally, what an art. And yes, it's going to be a bit more challenging. And it doesn't mean you've lost anything, although it can feel like you've lost so much. Far enough back, you'd be like, oh my God, my game is 10 levels higher than it ever was. And I'm spinning all of these plates and I'm still moving towards my abundance. if you will, I think that whole scenario that you just described, Leon, really kind of boils down to what the art and magic of life is. It's like that being led by our dreams or being pushed on by our fears, both of us leading us higher, as I enumerated a little bit earlier, to kind of solidify better than ever before that connection with the divine. And then it slips a little because our game's gone up and the stakes are a little higher. The board has gotten a little bit more complicated until ultimately when we all do arrive at that place and we're conscious, streaming, deliberate creators. And when we get to that place, we're going to realize, oh, this is where I started from. This is where I started from. And I voluntarily took that plunge into time and space where I would willingly forget who I really was, that I'm everywhere always at once, a God particle extraordinaire for the adventure of it. You can only have the adventure if you allow yourself to get lost. Then we get lost and we think, oh, I'm such a flippin' idiot. How could I be so lost? Look, they're not lost. They're not lost. They're happy right now. And it's like, no, by being lost, you can be found. And that doesn't mean that for every high, there's a low. Too many people misunderstand the concept of contrast. You don't have to know what you don't like to know what you do like. But sure enough, it can be helpful. And so we kind of cycle in and out of, ease and challenge without realizing we're always moving higher. And when we get to that place, like, oh, this is so obvious. God is everything. I am everywhere. There's just me and more me. My thoughts become things. It's going to be like, you know what? Life is just a little bit too easy now. What's the next crazy adventure on the cutting edge of reality creation in the mind of God, the heart of God? And that's when we probably leave the wheel. We've learned all those lessons that we're taught about karmically. And it's like, all right, back where we started, was all good, never lost anything, just forgot it. Forgot that I had it for some of that journey, which made the journey possible, and all is supremely well. It is so supremely well.
I could literally sit here and just listen to you speak for hours.
Oh,
because you have a flow, right? And how can you not have a flow when you have dedicated your life, when anyone has dedicated their lives to channeling that divinity, right? Most of us will never understand what it feels like to truly channel that divinity. And when one is in the presence of someone that does that, it is a very calming experience. And again, I find it to be, I just came up with this idea for this podcast. I've been on many podcasts, right? And they all know more about me than I know about myself, because they've Googled me, because they've read my books, they know exactly what question they're going to ask, and that's fine, right? That's a way to do it. But I was like, how can we do this differently? How can we just completely connect on the purest of levels with no kind of research, no, just pureness. And this is proof that when you do that, when you just go into a connection with another human being, magic can happen. That's where the magic is. I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel that you and I are having this conversation on a different level. We're not having this conversation here. It is just kind of in that level of magic.
Yeah. So well put, and so needed. I love it. I can't wait to see the next installment.
Well, look, Mike, it's been a true pleasure. I want to thank you for playing along with this surprise of who on earth Leon is going to chat with, right?
I'm honored. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And I'm very, very much looking forward to the documentary that we're doing. I'm so honored that you wanted to be a part of that. And it hopefully will inspire some people to kind of see beyond the matrix, let's call it that, and to connect to their humanity. And by connecting to their humanity, they will get the opportunity to connect to the divinity that surrounds all of us and is within all of us. And I'm just very grateful that you're part of it and that you're part of my life. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate you coming onto the podcast and being part of the madness.
It is so mutual, Leon. You and your team are pure magic. You are my inspiration. So keep shining your light. Best wishes and congratulations at the same time.
Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, it's Leon here, aka the Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.